Well, what do you mean? You don't have other things to do than just run out of the office and go show homes to complete strangers?
Right, I've just been
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Prestige Living Podcast. So with that, who do you want to be? Hello, welcome to Prestige Living. This is Jay O'Brien, your host, and this is a brand new segment called Real Estate Truths and Myths. And we will be doing this, just kind of peppering into the shows every few weeks, just to add 5 or 10 minutes of what we would like to think is common misconceptions, maybe even common sense that we need to relay to the whole world out there so that people have an idea. We've written a lot of articles for Realtor Magazine and Inman and a couple different publications out there that we often direct consumers to so they can read them and see, oh, wow, that actually makes sense. But in this day and age, let's face it, you might not have time to read. So if you just got a couple quick minutes to listen to these every few weeks, maybe it'll provide some insight and educate you a bit. I am here with my business partner, Samra Madauer.
Hello, thank you, Jay.
And what we want to go over today, this is one that we talk about a lot. It's actually one of the very first articles that we ever wrote for Realtor Magazine, and we end up talking about it with most of our clients. And yesterday it came up in a listing appointment, and actually the result was kind of interesting. I'll go over that in a minute. But the topic is, as a home buyer, why do you not want to go directly to the listing agent? So before we get into it, let me just ask Sammer, why would a home buyer not want to call the name on the sign that for the house that's being sold? It seems like it's sound logic that you would just call the number, but why is that a bad idea?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that we do come across all the time. And, the reason why it happens is because of how real estate agents used to do business and how there was a lack of technology back in the day, but we don't really need to get into the history too much. But the quickest and easiest way to understand it is if you were in a court of law and you were getting a divorce, unfortunately we don't want people to get divorces, but you wouldn't have the same attorney represent you. And really that's the easiest way to understand it.
Okay, that makes sense. So you want two separate parties representing the buyer and the seller because they both have different interests.
Yeah, exactly. Our license, we are salespeople, but we're never selling our clients, right? We use our sales skills to negotiate, to represent the best interests of our clients, and clients is a special word. So before you hire an agent, you're actually just a consumer. You're a prospect. They really don't have any fiduciary responsibilities, and we'll use that. We'll say that you can have implied fiduciary responsibilities, but for the most part, let's just say you don't have an explicit written contract with that person. So really, whose interests are they looking out for? When you hire an agent, they must look out for your best interests, and it's a written agreement, and there are two sides, right? So and you'll literally sign these papers when you hire an agent, and most people are never explained this, but the seller has an agent, and it's called the listing agent, and it says that they have a fiduciary responsibility to look out for their best interests with the utmost care. And the buyer's agent has that same responsibility. And how can one person do that for both parties?
Right, and in this day and age, it's funny because you see it all the time. Most buyers out there in the market that hire a realtor, they typically do not hire a realtor under contract. In fact, it's usually one of two things. One, they'll go directly to the listing agent, and that could be simply because they don't know any better, or could it be because maybe they think they know more than they do, and if they go directly to the listing agent, they'll, quote, get a deal, right? Because the listing agent has control over both commissions now and can fluctuate pricing accordingly. And then the second one is calling just your realtor on Redfin or Zillow or anyone who's available who will open a door and show you property. And the idea is, hey, if this guy shows me the property, if this guy finds me the home, then I'll write the offer with him. And it's our fault, really. It's as realtors, it's our fault for allowing this perception to happen because in the eyes of a consumer, a realtor is a realtor is a realtor. And I know when I bought my first house, I saw it the same way. I saw no value in any realtor I worked with. And, that's not my fault as the consumer because no one ever demonstrated value to me. And so I just treated them all the same. And I really saw their value as opening a door for me and then earning a jackpot paycheck if things worked out.
Yep, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, we're looked at as professional door openers that just get lucky and cash in these big checks, and a lot of people just don't see the value in this because we haven't been able to provide it or show it to them.
Right. So, I mean, on that, if you think about this, if you're a consumer, if you're a home buyer listening to this, think about it like this. If you go directly to the listing agent, just as Sammer said, they have a fiduciary responsibility to represent the seller's best interest over yours, which means get them the most money, negotiate the best terms, everything that will be absolutely unfavorable to you, just like the divorce hypothetical situation, right? You don't want the same attorney representing both parties. Same idea. The alternative option is to call just your random realtor to show you property. The problem is 9 out of 10 realtors, this is a legitimate statistic in Orange County, 9 out of 10 realtors in Orange County sell no more than 3 homes a year. The average commission, the average annual salary among realtors hovers in the low $20,000 range. So that's crazy. It's basically saying that realtors out there, 90% of them are starving for a commission. So when you make that phone call for them to open that door, the chances of you getting legitimate, sound advice that is not steered a certain way is highly unlikely, especially for the fact that they know that there's a very low probability that you're going to call them again. You're probably just going to call the next realtor for the next home showing. So this is their one and only shot to earn a commission, if any. So as a consumer, you really got to think, who do I want to hire to represent me as a buyer and be exclusive with that person? Who do I trust enough and who provides enough value for me to say, this is my guy or this is my girl? And I trust that when we go look at homes, they'll say, this is a good situation, this is a bad situation, and be honest with you.
Right, exactly. And so, Jay, I guess the question is, when people call realtors that just go and open doors, or let me phrase it a different way. If someone called you at 11 o'clock in the morning and you picked up your phone and they were calling on a listing or potentially a property that you had listed or a different property, would you just get up and leave the office and go show them a house?
If I wanted to go broke, I would probably do that.
Well, what do you mean? You don't have other things to do than just run out of the office and go show homes to complete strangers?
Right. I've just been waiting for that call. I'm just so eager to just jump out and go drive someone I've never talked to in my life. Maybe they could buy it. Maybe they can't. Maybe they're the client I want to work with. Maybe they're not. Maybe they can afford the house. Maybe they can't. I mean, it seems foolish. And not only is it just foolish from a business standpoint, but it's also just dangerous.
Right. I mean, we've been hearing a lot more through the social media and the different media outlets of realtors and consumers being in danger, just meeting complete strangers at homes that they thought were realtors or vice versa, and people gone missing. And, not to scare anybody, but the bottom line is it seems that agents a lot of the times are trying to take advantage of the emotional and excitement that's involved in home purchasing. And so when they get that call, they want to show that house and they want to sell that specific house rather than go through the educational process, qualify the buyer, educate them, and tell them whether they really should or shouldn't be buying a house or whether they're even looking at the right type of property.
Yeah, exactly. And there's two things I want to touch on here. So number one, if you go directly to the listing agent will love that. The way it works, for those of you who are unfamiliar with how a real estate agent gets paid, there's essentially 2 commission buckets that are set aside from the seller. One is for the listing agent, the agent who's representing the seller, and the other one is for the agent who brings the buyer. So if that listing agent is able to collect 2 buckets and double their income in one shot, they are highly invested and ready to go on this transaction. And again, not representing your best interest, and in this case, not representing the seller's best interest either, because it's legally and ethically almost impossible to provide sound advice that gears one way or the other toward the seller or the buyer when you're representing both parties. How can I look out for one person's best interest and also the other person's best interest simultaneously? It's nearly impossible. And there are extenuating circumstances where dual agency does happen, but for the most part, I think you can agree if you're listening to this that it's sound logic that most of the time that is not the best decision. And I have an example of this that happened recently. We had a listing over in Corona Del Mar, and the home was appraised prior to putting it on the market at $1.9 million, and I had valued it personally at $2 million. I had an all-cash buyer at $2 million ready to go. The seller wanted to keep the property off the market. That's something you'll hear a lot, pocket listings, let's keep it off the market. It's cool, it's exclusive, what have you. This is hardly ever in the seller's best interest to do this. But the point is the seller wanted to do it that way. They wanted it to be a quick transaction. I had the buyer, and what I had to do was pump the brakes a little bit and educate the seller on what would be the best decision for them and what would be in their best interest, because that scenario, had I just been an order taker and said, yes ma'am or yes sir, let's do it, everyone would have perceived to have won, but really the only people who would have really won would be myself and the buyer. That's it. The seller actually would have lost. And in this example, I provided some information as to why I should take it to market, and really the whole point to why you hire me isn't, or our brokerage, isn't to just shuffle papers. It's to do a job, to market, to negotiate. We did, and we ended up selling that property for $2.5 million. It was not to a client of mine, and boom, there's a perfect illustration of how you're able to represent the seller's best interest in true fashion without dual agency.
Correct. I mean, the whole point of dual agency is you become a facilitator. You really cannot disclose the highest price that the buyer is willing to pay, and you cannot disclose the lowest price that the seller is willing to sell for. And so in essence, you get paid double for doing absolutely nothing. And going back to the court example, it would be like an attorney just sitting there and the husband and wife duking it out, and he really can't make an argument for either side, and he just tells the judge to decide on the case. Why would you pay someone all that money? Really, you want someone that's going to be looking out for your best interest. And I'd like to ask another question, because I'm sure this is something that's in the back of a lot of people's heads as they're listening to this. Because, hey, there's a lot of people that go directly to the listing agent, and whether it be a weak agent or maybe a borderline unethical agent, or someone who's just desperate for money, like you mentioned, the average salary is the $20,000 range. They're not going to pass up that opportunity. You should be really careful about who you hire. You should go through an interview process. I mean, if somebody's not willing to interview for a job, are they really worth hiring? And the question I want to address is somebody that goes directly to the listing agent, Jay, and they're thinking in the back of their heads, hey, there's 3% commission. This is a $1 million home. That's $30,000 that I could have. And what do we explain to those people that try to that quantify that value and only see that dollar amount and try to go directly to the listing agent? What are they losing potentially? And you just did bring up the example of the 2.5. That was on the seller side. How about on the buyer side?
Yeah, so on the buyer side, people often think that, again, I mentioned it earlier, that real estate agents, when they earn a commission, it's viewed as like a jackpot, unearned paycheck. And this 3% that the buyer's going in with thinking, well, this is money that I could potentially have in return, or this is money I could be saving. There's so many variables there, and so much that's potentially at risk, because number one, if I'm going directly to the listing agent as a buyer, they have a vested interest in selling me this home. So whether $30,000 is or is not viewed as a lot of money, or whatever that percentage is on the purchase price, we really have no idea what's happening on the other end. And is this property really fair market value? And is there any underlying problems I should be made aware of that aren't being properly disclosed to me? Am I being advised to inspect things further than I should? And the answer is no. I mean, these things aren't going to happen, because the person representing the seller wants to sell that property. They've been hired to sell that property. Right. So by kind of the way I look at it, anytime someone asks for a kickback or referral, or hey, will you give me some of your commission? The answer is always 100% hell no. Why would I do that? Right. You want to give me some of your money? Right. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And with the agents that agree to do it, it's very simple. It's bribery. It's hey, I'll give you $8,000 if you do business with me. And you really want to do business with someone like that? Yeah,
it's really simple. And you ask yourself the question, it's like, what becomes the focus of the transaction now? What is literally the best interest? If I'm supposed to be looking out for your best interest, then money that's going to me or to you should never be the discussion. And that is actually why in the California Association of Realtor Contracts, you are actually never allowed to discuss or have any commission put into the purchase agreement between a buyer and a seller. And a lot of agents make this mistake. They don't know that they could actually lose in arbitration or mediation by the local MLS rules. It is not appropriate and actually not right, and you could get sued. and lose your commission if you have a commission interfered or put into a contract between a buyer and seller. And the main concept behind that is very simple. The contract between buyer and seller and your relationship and your payment should never be an obstacle in the transaction, because it's a conflict of interest. So the second you bring that up to an agent, a reputable agent will never discuss it. And
right. There's two things that happened yesterday I thought were so interesting. I'm at this listing appointment, and this is for a home here in Orange County. It's valued around $1.1 million, and the two parties that were at the table yesterday both had experienced dual agency when purchasing their home. Now, the first person was trying to purchase their dream home, okay? They had hired an exclusive buyer's agent to represent them. They came in $30,000 higher than any other offer. They lost. They lost because the listing agent accepted an offer for a buyer they were representing. And here's the whole kicker to this story. As this person's telling me the story, they said, oh yeah, it was the biggest bummer, blah, blah, blah. Obviously the buyer's bummed. They said the seller, the homeowner, was in tears because they wanted to accept their offer.
Wow.
Talk about an agent who's been hired to represent someone's best interest and has coerced the seller to do something that is in the agent's best interest. And you know what? I'm not surprised. It happens all the time. But that was an example of yesterday. And then the other example for the other party who was there said that when she purchased her home, she went directly through the listing agent and said it was just the worst experience she's ever had, that she felt like she was in the dark on a lot of things, that she wasn't being told the truth through and through. And this is just, I'm just at an appointment yesterday, and these are two people telling me similar stories with different results and different outcomes about the same sort of problem.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and a lot of the industry is going through a major revolution, and a lot of these old habits that the way consumers act are because of how the industry used to be. It's because of technology, about how the different forms and relationships, buyer representation wasn't as prevalent back 10 and 15 years ago. Now it's very prevalent, and people are seeing the value in it. But consumers have been trained to act a certain way, and old habits are hard to break, and they are being broken, and that's why we want to educate people. And a little twist to what we're talking about, how about, I'm sure this happened to you, Jay, how about when people walk in, you're the listing agent on a property, and they say, hey, not only do I want you to represent me on the purchase of this home, but if you can get my offer accepted, I'll let you list my house. How do you feel about situations like that?
Yeah, again, the way it boils down is it's just bribery, and with anything, I gotta say, anyone's gonna be distracted by the dollars and cents with things, right? Like, people are gonna get distracted by money. If I see a potential of a $15,000 commission, and all of a sudden, if I just do one thing a certain way, it's gonna turn into $45,000. I get how people can steer in that direction, and it takes a certain type of person to not make decisions based on money to that extent. I get it. But I guess that's what separates the true professionals from the people that are just out there to earn a buck. If you do right by your clients in any industry, not just in real estate, but in anything, if you just put money second, and admittedly, you will have to make a conscious effort of doing this, constantly reminding yourself that needs to come second and the client needs to come first. If you make this a habit, you'll be in business forever. You'll get hand over fist referral business, and you'll have more money than you know what to do with. That $45,000, that's just a one-shot deal. But your reputation is everything. So to answer your question, and we get this every day. I get phone calls just as you do every day with people with these sort of propositions, and the only way those sort of things are going to happen is if it's in line with what I signed up to do, which is represent the client who has signed up with me.
Right. Yeah, what you're basically saying is there's ethical ways to do every type of situation. However, the situations that we're discussing today, I mean, they really should be the very, very few and far between transactions. It's very unlikely and rare that we would be representing the best buyer, and it would be in the client's best interest and everybody's best interest in the scenario where they want to buy the property that we have listed, and we also are going to list their house. All of that is a very rare situation, rather than just letting the property hit the market and let all the qualified buyers come, and typically those are represented by other professionals out in the marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're listening to this and none of the things that we say on this show are designed to be a commercial for our brokerage, we really want to educate people and inform them on anything. So regardless of what company you hire, what real estate professional you go to, make sure that if you are a buyer, that you're speaking to someone before going out there and looking at homes, and making sure that your interests are aligned with this individual, that you actually trust them. If you don't trust them, don't challenge their advice, just fire them and move on. It's that simple. Something that we do here with every single buyer, whether you've purchased a ton of homes or no homes at all, we do a home buyers counseling session. You come in, you sit down, we meet face to face before looking at any properties. We go over current market conditions, what's happening in the local economy, what's happening in the local market, and without vague and ambiguous terms of it's a hot market, it's a cold market, it's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. I mean, we will lay out numbers, absorption rate, days on market, average sales price, things that are actually relevant to what you're looking at, and review what it is that your target goal is. And throughout that, we'll also explain the process of escrow, answer any questions, go over things that most home buyers are unfamiliar with. Even if you've purchased a home before, things that maybe you forgot about or happened in the moment and you didn't quite understand it, such as contingencies, deposits, inspections, appraisals, etc. All of this is gone over in depth in a home buyers counseling session. And I got to say, these things are one of the most successful meetings that we hold here at RE/MAX Prestige, because when people come in, boom, they actually see the value of a realtor. You've spent an hour of your time with someone who may or may not hire you, or may not even be qualified to buy, but they feel like, wow, I can really trust this individual. What they said makes perfect sense. I have questions, I don't, whatever. And when they leave, they feel 1,000% more comfortable in the whole process, and that's why we have such successful transactions. And I say this all the time, and Sammer knows, we constantly, this is like a mantra of ours, we tell people, you can contact any client of ours that we've ever helped on the buying or selling side, and if they don't tell you 100%, yes, I would trust RE/MAX Prestige again with my purchase or sale, then don't bother with us. It's that simple. You know, you're only as good as your reputation. And again, whether you use a different real estate brokerage here in Orange County, a different real estate agent and whatnot, we want to bring this information to everybody's attention so that you're not hiring your distant cousin who does real estate on the side, or a family friend, or a coworker who has a real estate license. That does not qualify you to handle one of the biggest assets of your life. It doesn't. So you want to hire the professional who's doing it full time, who knows and has the experience. And to Sammer's point earlier, someone who's willing to interview for it. Remember, these commission checks in Orange County with the purchase price, they can range. I mean, they could go from $6,000 to $100,000. You know, it's a big sum of money that needs to be taken seriously and not viewed as, I got it. You know, like people always say that I used Sammer to buy my house, right? Listen to that, what you're saying. I used him, or I gave him the listing. Don't do us any favors. Right. You know, like we want to work for it, and that's the whole point, is that these sort of tidbits on our show, Real Estate Truths and Myths, are designed just to kind of spark a couple things in your mind, things that you've probably heard or not heard in the past, and we want to bring light to them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, with the availability of information on the internet, it's a good place to start. And a lot of people try to substitute that for actually talking to a professional. They think they can make the decisions on their own. But the easiest way to put that is, you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know what questions to ask, and education is key. Any reputable real estate professional is willing to give you the time if you're willing to give them the time. So take what's available to you, and don't just jump on the phone and start showing homes. Don't put the cart before the horse.
Well said. So if you're listening to this, and if you do have an interest in learning more about the market or scheduling a home buyer's counseling session, please either find us online on Facebook by searching Remax Prestige. You can contact us directly at 714-660-4008. And you can also visit us online at prestigelivingpodcast.com. Thank you.
If you would like to be on the Prestige Living Podcast or know someone that would be a great guest, go to www.prestigelivingpodcast.com.